Welcome to the Scottish Property Podcast. This is a show where we aim to educate, inspire and entertain through real life stories and interviews from people in the Scottish property community.
As always, thanks for listening and give us a follow on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Remember to join us at our monthly networking events on the first Wednesday of every month. Tickets are available on our website. So without further ado, we'll just cut straight into this week's podcast. Okay, welcome back to the Scottish Property Podcast. Davy, Hutton, thank you for joining us today.
Hello.
I've got to say, we brought you in for some more TikTok love because the last clips that we put out on our social media on our TikTok, I think one of them got like 180,000 views, I think. So we put you viral and there was some cracking comments on there we were just discussing as well.
It's two for those of you that don't know, Nick phones me up and he's like, Davy, this cut that we put out on TikTok to advertise the podcast, it's gone a bit viral, it's gone mental, do you want me to take it down? And I'm like, we want to take it down. He says, the comments are brutal. Let me have a look, and they were brutal, but they were brilliant.
Savage. TikTok
is a savage platform, eh?
It's a dirty wild west of social media where...
Because nobody's accountable. It's not. I don't know a lot about TikTok, but you go into it and it's like username 75642.
That's the new age fucking thing you can say on social media. You can say whatever you want and not get slapped in the face for it. That they wouldn't walk up to Davy Hutton in the street and say, fucking, what was it? Hulk's fucking shagged the... JK for what was your favourite comment again?
If Hulk Hogan and Jack Sparrow had a love child with the JK for your street, this would be the result.
And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see what we're talking about.
I mean, think about this, because I get pictures in my head. Jack Sparrow and Hulk Hogan are having sex with a JK for the end of your street. Who's having sex with who in this threesome?
And who's giving birth to you?
But I'm simultaneously, and one guy's telling me that I'm like Jack Sparrow's da, and then the next comment says Hulk Hogan's son, Johnny.
So there you go. There's how to go viral on TikTok. Fucking
interesting though. Like our numbers went viral on TikTok, but we're losing numbers on the actual podcast. So I don't know what's happened there.
Maybe we need to pivot.
Aye,
that's changed.
But an interesting fact for you actually talking about TikTok. Do you know that TikTok's actually worth more as a company than Shell? That's
right.
An interesting fact. And they've only been, I mean, TikTok's less than 10 years old. Shell's been going for 110 years. Do you know what I mean? So that's the power of it.
I know I sound like an old person saying it, but it's a scary, scary world that we're moving into. It's definitely a new world. It's
for sure. Well, let's get on to the serious stuff anyway. And the reason we brought you in, obviously, is to talk about the market update. We do this every month, just for the listeners' benefit. It's the 26th of October. So looking back at the month of October, see what's happened. I've pulled out a few news stories, which we'll get Davy's input and get a wee discussion on. So obviously, starting off with really what's driving the whole kind of market is the inflation data, and interest rates really has a big effect on the property market and has been. So picking out this news story, the inflation data came in and we're stuck for 2 months in a row. It's been at 6.7%. So is Rishi Sunak going to get the inflation cut to half by the end of the year, or are we going to stick around this? Are we going to get sticky around the 5%?
You know, Rishi stood up there and said, I'm going to half inflation by the end of the year. And not by anything he's doing. All he's doing is piggybacking himself on what should be happening anyway. Bank of England, who controls that. Is he going to get there? Probably not. I think inflation's going to stick for a wee while, and I think the higher interest rates are here for a wee while. There is obviously things they can do politically to make themselves look better over the next 12 months, but we're going to pay for that, longer.
So we're sitting at 5.25% is the Bank of England base rate right now. So, this is, I just think it's a weird time because obviously there's been 14 or 15 rises in like 18 months and it doesn't really seem to be having this kind of massive impact. So is this like going to need to wait? Is this like a lag? Is this going to be a lag and we're going to need to wait until midway into 2024 for the effects to really see the effects? Or
I think the effects are starting now. I think they weren't there 3 or 4 months ago. I think they're there last month. I think they're there this month. So it depends. I work off a gut feel from.
What makes you say that then, David? Just what
How
you're
can we
seeing?
see that? How can we see that?
It's what I see on the ground. You know, it's that kind of thing of, if a guy misses his mortgage payment, he knows a month before he misses that mortgage payment that he's going to miss it. The bank pay attention to it once he's missed his first two. It goes up the chain once he's missed his first 3 or 4. The top of the chain only realises the statistic once he's missed 6. So in actual fact, the guy in the street was like 7 or 8 months ahead of the chief exec, if you like, in terms of the change in patterns. My gut feel just now is that it's stopped dead. The market's stopped dead. Started last month. So if you're looking at figures dated August or July, they're going to tell a completely different story from what I think.
Which we're going to go into, because obviously there's a lag in getting the house price data, but we will go into that. But so if you're sitting on the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee, then what would you be voting for at the end of, I think it's middle of next month or something like that? Any more rises in the rate, or just stay?
No change, I think.
Stick. Right.
Even though the inflation didn't drop? Because the last one they stalled it, didn't they? This last month was the first time they stalled it.
I think they're in a really difficult situation because in a lot of ways inflation has not been caused by an overheating economy. It's being caused by supply chain issues. It's been caused by a war in Ukraine. It's now, get the Middle East to factor in. It's
wages going up.
Well, it's still dealing with the pandemic. I mean, wages going up is reactive to inflation going up. The wages going up didn't happen first. Fuel, I mean, nobody's saying anything about fuel. What was it this morning, 159 or something?
Price oil's gone up to, what is it, $90 a barrel?
I'm old enough to remember the trucks doing the slow-moving protests on the motorways.
Went up to £1.
Yeah, now they're moving from 139 to 159 overnight. Nobody gives a fuck.
No one cares, aye.
Obviously, then you've got to look at the geopolitical situation in Israel and Iran. If Iran get involved, then what's going to happen to oil prices? They sanction Iran. Iran are one of the top producing oil countries in the world. So if they stop that, then oil prices are going to shoot up, which is going to have an effect on all of us. Bringing that in, that whole news thing, like I've kind of gone down that slippery slope again, Stephen, into that dark place of being that news junkie, just with obviously the stuff that's happening in Israel and that. And it does, I just came back from my holidays from Tenerife there, and I had a chat with my wife before we went away, and I says, look, I really need to stop this news going down this rabbit hole, because it really was starting to affect my mood. So where do you sit on that? Because obviously you listen to a lot of kind of gurus and people that are trying to sell you property courses, and they're trying to tell you not to listen to the news because they obviously want to keep you upbeat, because they want you to pay for their courses and all the rest of it. So people are saying, don't listen to the news, don't try, and this doesn't affect you, don't take in information that you don't have any control over. Where do you sit where you need to be kind of like, how do you inform yourself, keep yourself informed and making smart choices, and not going down that rabbit hole of getting depressed, basically?
I think you've got to have a blend. As you get older, you get a bit wiser. I mean, I was a news junkie. I watch everything, but then I watch it from every news channel. I watch it on CNN and Al Jazeera, and particularly when it comes to the Middle East.
To get some balance, basically.
Yeah, you just see the different ways that different organisations are reporting it. Most people don't do that. They take the snippets, they take the headline.
The TikTok.
They
doom and gloom.
But it's an interesting thing, like guys in general talk about, we'll solve this problem in the Middle East, or we'll talk about politics in America or China or whatever. Women are sorting out like the day-to-day stuff, the house, kind of bundles of clothes and things, painting a wall, doing things that are necessary.
This is not going to go down well.
We're worrying about things that we cannot sort.
We can't control.
Hang on a second.
We forget the stuff that we actually can sort. We forget today. And this is where women are great. Women are great at today stuff. Guys are great at tomorrow stuff, or things that will never happen.
Aye. Or about 10 years in the future.
Yeah, and one of the most valuable things that I learned was, you don't know what you don't know until you know it.
My favourite saying.
You just don't know. So you talk about the Middle East, you can think you know, but you don't. You can talk about inflation and the Bank of England and everything, and think you know, but you don't know all the behind the scenes information.
You're only getting what they want you to see,
Exactly.
or what people tell you.
Exactly. Therefore, it's good to talk about it. But I'm not going to beat myself up about it anymore. I'm not going to get depressed, because if you do look at the potential third world war, I mean, look, Ukraine's a potential third world war. The Middle East a potential third world war. You would
do nothing.
Everything's a potential third world war.
Would it paralyse you to taking any action on your businesses and your life because you would be too worried about what's the external forces?
Well, I think you have to carry on. You have to. You have to. Keep doing. We live in a good place.
It's a therapy session for Nick here, isn't it?
No, I think with the whole kind of
Still worrying
humanity.
about his wife's going to say.
Well, I'm worrying what our female listeners are going to
like,
say.
fuck,
after
Lisa's going to hear this.
No,
going
I
that.
think you misunderstand me. I was actually kind of praising women. And
Yeah.
All right.
the women are the ones that are carrying on doing the business, while we're all worrying about a third world war.
Yeah.
And you have to have that.
Not all doing the house chores, might I add, because in my household it's 100% 50-50.
I thought you were going to say it's 100% you.
100% 50.
It's also very PC in here.
I know,
You can't
eh?
say
It's-
anything.
I know.
I'm telling you,
Fucking
we've
hell,
got
Nick.
we've got 50% female listeners, I'm pretty sure.
Get that bit on
Nick's trying to
TikTok.
get us cancelled.
I'm just defending women because my wife's a feminist, so I just need to watch.
You know
this.
you're going to get a beating when you get home.
Exactly. I'm like, should be pulling me off this podcast.
That's it. They're a bad influence. You're not fucking doing that again.
Right, moving on from all that doom and gloom then, because we don't really have much control over what goes on in Israel and whether or not they're going to obliterate Gaza. So let's just move on to some positive stuff. Actually, this is quite positive. House prices holding up in Scotland compared to the rest of the UK. Now, Davy, you're going to tell us differently, but these stats are obviously taken from the Land Registry.
When?
This is August.
August tour.
So
Aye.
these sales have probably happened
In July, June.
probably 3 months prior to August, really, because by the time...
Yeah, you're looking at May, June sales
Yeah.
for that. Yeah.
Which the market was still quite good.
Yeah.
So obviously, giving you the top line stats,
Market always falls flat in July and August.
the annual price change of a property in Scotland was up 1.1%. Now, I think last month we reported over the 12 months it was only up 0.1%. So it's still staying up in positive territory. Interesting though, I picked out a wee line here from the data that said that the volume of transactions increased 8.7% in Scotland and decreased by 3.2% in the whole of the UK. So I guess like number of transactions, it's basically saying in Scotland we're a lot better off and the market is propping up a lot more
We
compared
increased
to
8% on when?
provisional UK
Year on year from
estimate
June
for
22.
June 2023. I think this is
June
over the last
2022.
over the last 12 months. Oh, sorry, compared to June 2022, I think.
Yeah, I've not actually broken it down to Scotland v the UK. I think the UK levels now are down round about 2012, 2013 levels.
That doesn't really make sense, though, does it? From what you're seeing on the ground and from
I
what
don't-
we're seeing as well.
But have you only seen that recently? Like we're saying, the data's just that few months lag behind.
It's such a mixed market. I mean, if you look at, I think 30%, 1 in 3 house sales are cash purchases. So, 1/3 of all purchases don't rely on a mortgage. So that tends to be your more affluent areas. In Glasgow terminology, that's your West End, your South Side.
Or investor market where you're like,
Yeah, well-
50, 60 grand on that.
Well, the majority of the investor market is mortgage led, but the point is that the areas that are selling properties for cash are holding up better, obviously, than the mortgage markets. So the West End's doing okay, East Kilbride's not. It's a very mixed market. The volumes are very low in East Kilbride. They're still turning round in the West End. Although, as I was saying to you just before we went on air, the West End is slowing down now. Got a friend sitting with one in Park Circus, the 650 grand property, with nobody wanting to see it. I've got one sitting in Partick that's slow. Now, 2 months ago, it was still slower than it was, but the price that you would have got would have held up. Now I think the marketplace is wisening up to it, because the 30%
They're not
of
paying
people
that.
are paying for cash. They're not idiots. You know, they're more likely to be reading the paper that's saying things are starting to slow. And it's a gradual thing. It starts with, I've got to pay more than home report, to I'm only paying home report value, to I'm not going to pay home report value. It takes a wee while just to filter through. I
think I agree with you. I think we're filtering at that point where people probably, when this data was stacking up, and back 3-4 months ago, people came to the realisation we can get away with paying home report now. I think we're now into this realm where entering it quite quickly, where people are realising we can pay under home report now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I took one on yesterday in Kirkintilloch off another agent. It's been sitting on the market for a year, being advertised below home report value. Now,
home report's wrong. Huh?
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know where it goes from here. I don't think it's going to crash, because I don't think, for all there's a very low volume of properties coming out in the market, there's a much lower volume of people wanting to buy it. So you've got a kind of equilibrium just now.
So that's propping up the prices, basically.
I think so. I expect to see it tailing off over the next 12 months. I don't think it's going to crash, but I expect to see it dipping. I think you're probably going to drop 5-10%.
Well, my prediction at the start of the year was negative 10%
by the end of the year.
That was in January. I think so. I'm way off. I mean,
I'm starting to more agree with you, but I'm thinking that you were maybe a year ahead. You were a year pessimistically.
I think you said flatline.
Aye.
I think you said.
Well, am I going to be right by then?
I think you are going to be. Well, according to the land registry. But remember, this is lagged by 3 months.
Aye.
So let's predict into the future a further 3 months.
I think you're going to, if we fast forward a year, I think you're going to be more right at the 10%.
I think so.
Aye.
I can't say it's definitely not going up. Do you know what I mean? The only way is down, because if you think about the number of people coming off the fixed rate mortgages and all that, that's going to start impacting. Already seen it around my bit, right? Where you've got 4 or 5 bedroom detached houses. People are maybe, their kids have moved on. They're now living in that 5 bedroom detached house. They're downsizing. So they're trying to sell these properties, and these are the ones that seem to be sticking as well. Yeah. Higher value properties, because the interest rates are
300-400 grand property, Mark.
I think there's a lot of re-education of the public going on as well. But if you remember, go back to the lockdown stage, when Martin Lewis, I remember him being on the telly almost greeting, saying to folk, your energy bills are going to go through the roof. You need to know this is coming. But they didn't. People ran out and spent all their money. Everything that they saved over lockdown, let's monoblock the whole street.
On the Range Rovers.
Yeah, exactly. Spend this money. That's not the public's fault. The government have educated people over the last 30 years that you have to spend everything that you earn, because that's how you grow an economy. You don't have rainy day money, you keep spending it. You just keep borrowing, you spend it on something else. You put a new kitchen in where you don't need a new kitchen. You put a new...
Put it on the mortgage.
You put a new bathroom in every time some guest does a shit in it, kind of thing. Not somebody else's bum in my toilet, kind of thing. And you'll see it all the time, you see properties selling, and they've got perfectly nice kitchens. And the first thing you see is a skip outside, and everything's thrown in.
One of my wife's friends, actually, they moved into a new build, but because they didn't pick the kitchen, feels like she needs to replace it after a few years. But it's got too much money.
But that's how we've educated people. And we now need to get back to, you need rainy day money. And this shock that people are getting thrown at them just now will say to them, particularly people under the age of 40 who have never really known it before, they've only ever known low interest rates, it's going to say to them for the future, I think I need rainy day money, I need savings, which takes money away from the economy, which reduces your growth. It's really very complex.
If you're buying a property, say Denison, Glasgow or something like that, or even the West End up to say 150 grand or something, a wee 1-bedroom flat, it's still working out, I think, cheaper to buy, even with the higher interest rates, that is to rent, because the rents have gone crazy as well. So I think that is propping up that kind of lower value stock as well, possibly.
But isn't it crazy though that can be the case and you can't get the mortgage? You can afford to pay the rent, but you can't afford to pay the mortgage, which brings your costs down.
Or you own that.
With stress testing that some of the lenders are doing.
Well, to me, the government could come in, I'm talking off the top of my head here without thinking it through, but the government could come in and say to lenders, you must lend 100% to a first-time buyer. That's the way it used to work. You got 100% only when you bought your first property. And then when that went up, you bought your second property, and the money that you'd made off the first one went into the
deposit, the next one,
into the second one, and it's looking after all the rungs in the ladder. If you don't have the first rung, nobody can move.
Yeah.
You know, and to me that seems like a fairly simple solution. You must lend that 100%.
Bring back the 100% mortgages, Dave.
For first-time buyers.
They've got a couple already that we'd already talked about this a few months back on the podcast. Skipton Building Society had launched a 100% mortgage, but I don't think it's been taken up widely.
No, I remember you talking about that before. You kind of knew when you were speaking about that nobody would ever really
pass the criteria to use it. But I think there's popular lenders are using 95% mortgages for first-time buyers, which, let's face it, to get a 5% deposit for your 120 grand flat in Denniston, surely is quite affordable. For
so much manipulation goes on in the property market as well. You know, you hear all the stories about how many houses that we need to build because we're so short of them. But at the same time, the house builders are sitting with massive land banks that they're not going to build on just now because the house prices are not doing what they want them to do. So it's the same as the market for diamonds or gold or Rolex making watches. They control how much they put onto the market. Which controls the price of houses. So we can sit here and we can look at, you know, economics all we like, but again it comes back to that you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on from house prices on to rents. So this is an interesting article here. We all know that rents are going crazy, right? We know as landlords, obviously.
Yep.
There's two sides to this because people I thought your rents were capped at 3%. How can your rents be going crazy? But obviously for new properties coming on the market or when a tenant leaves, then you can jack it up to whatever you want or whatever the market will tolerate, basically. So I've pulled out this article here from the BBC, and it's interesting to see it. Obviously, you know, as landlords and investors, we need to see it from the other side as well. You know, you need to look at that from the renter's point of view as well, see how that's affecting people. How much is somebody's income? Can that really be sustainable? You know, if you're starting to pay 50% out of your income on rent, how is that affordable? You know, you've got a 17-year-old son, possibly going to uni or whatever. I've got kids growing up as well, eventually probably going to be renting. You know, if you're going to be in that situation where you're going to be paying the landlord the rent, you're going to be like, what the fuck is going on here? Do you know what I mean?
It's such a difficult one. I mean,
Can I read out the article first?
Sure,
Sorry.
sure.
Aye. So the headline is, my landlord wanted to put the rent up 35% despite a cap, right? And then that's talking about this loophole, basically. So straight after this article got put out, I had about 3 phone calls from landlords who have got properties that have been rented out for 2 or 3 years to the same tenants who have now fallen way behind market rent. They're like, I've seen this loophole in the news. Can you tell me if we can get more rent past the 3%? So anyway, I need to read it out. So the article focuses on a young woman called Catherine Sheldon. Catherine Sheldon is one of the thousands of young Scots struggling with the cost of living crisis who thought they would be protected from a large rent rise. Obviously, the government intervention. However, a loophole in the Scottish Government's rent cap rules allows her private landlord to seek a 35% rise because one of her flatmates gave notice to move out, ending the tenancy agreement. So she was basically sharing a flat with her pals. One tenant wants to move. The only way to get out of that is they all need to end the tenancy. So they end the tenancy. From that point onwards, the landlord is then entitled to reset the rent to the market level. So basically what's happened is the rent's gone from £520 a month to the landlord wanting £700 a month. Davy, is that fair?
Yes. The lease is broken, it's a new lease. So legally, is it fair? Yes. Morally, is it fair? No.
How do you feel if that was your son?
Well, personally, I've not put any of my rents up since lockdown, since before lockdown. But I don't have debt on the properties, so I'm not
needing to.
No.
How many buy-to-lets have you got?
20-something, and some commercial stuff. I don't have a big portfolio on it, but my feeling is that you need to, when you're starting off in the buy-to-let world, you need to build in your fuck factors. You need to know that interest rates are going to fluctuate. You need to know that inflation is going to fluctuate at some point in your working career. You can't just be rushing to pass it on to tenants because your interest rate's gone up. That's not their concern. That's your business. Concern. So I understand why the government want to try and protect. You can argue that 3% is probably too low. You probably need to be looking at inflation levels. But you look, forking up rents 35% because there's an undersupply. No, it's immoral. You've just made the point there that it's cheaper to buy than it is to rent. It shouldn't be. But it isn't. You know, landlords don't get a good name. And you need to aspire to you need to care about your tenants.
And they're your customers, aren't they?
Well, of course they are, yeah. I mean, in an ideal world, you want that tenant to come in and stay in that place for the next 20 years. Yeah. There's your secure investment. You know, it's not... But too many people are looking for this maximising everything. So, I mean, your guy that you're talking about there, his rent's gone from 530 to £700 on the landlord, but he's going to be a month sitting without the property let. So
I have this argument with people all the time. Like, people are looking at their low rents. You know, even in that case, it's 520 to 700. But by the time you evict tenant or the tenant leaves, and you're sitting there with remarketing costs, inventory checkouts, inventory check-ins back in for the new tenant, a month's void period. If you actually break it down, the landlord's just better off sticking with the old tenant with the old rent, and I know it's below market rent, but the tenant's protected, your investment's protected, and over a longer period of time.
But even if you're on a 75% mortgage on that, and your mortgage has gone up by 80 quid, put your rent up by 80 quid. Don't put your rent up by 280 quid. In that situation, you know, if your tenants have left and you've got an empty property, then the market will dictate what your rent should be. You've got to be fair with people.
We've got a kind of wide range. So, like, we manage 240 properties. We've got quite a few landlords that we deal with. We've got people like yourself who have never raised the rents. We've got tenants that have been in 4 or 5 years plus over the pandemic now through this cost of living crisis, and we've given the landlord the option of raising it by 3%. I think I can count, you know, on one hand the amount that have come back and said no, just keep it as is. Bit like yourself, but we have actually been recommending that people take the 3%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number one, because it boosts our profits.
I think it sets the precedent going forward, and I do agree with the 3%. I do agree with a rise every year. It sets the precedent to the tenant and the owner that the rents are going to rise every year. We've discussed this before in the podcast, where I've kept rents on a certain property for 9-10 years, and you look at it and you're like, fucking hell, we're miles below market value. But see, in the last 8 years, it didn't go up at all. It's only been this last bit. And I had the same attitude when the government got involved and capped it. I had this fuck you attitude to the government as well. Like, well, you're forcing me now to not put up, but I'm not putting up anyway.
That's the main driver.
You're forcing me, so now I'm going to put up because I'm needing to protect myself because you're taking that ability away from me.
But your rents are also going up because people can't get the mortgages. Because they can't get the mortgage, they have to rent the property. You know, some landlords are taking the property off the market to go to the Airbnb, the serviced apartment type market. So there's less rental properties than there used to be. Taking away the capital gains tax allowances for people meant that the landlords get rid of a property last year and didn't replace it with another one. You know, so
this is the worry, though, isn't it? It's turned, like you say, it's turned into almost a fight, and because we've been demonised so much, you know, it has turned into a kind of like,
you're fighting back now.
Fight back,
and the only person that's losing is the tenant.
The tenant's ultimately losing out, and that's the sad
thing. And if we don't look after the tenants long term, you don't
have a business.
No, you don't. Or you've got a really bad name.
It's really not. I can't see this ending well at all. I mean, you look at other countries where they've tried the rent controls, and by the way, the 3% thing ends at the end of March. So from the 1st of April, they're in the planning with some long-term rent control, which will play out. But
it should be inflation linked in some shape or form. I don't think any of us would bat an eyelid at that. No. But there is this thing that if you're charging somebody £600 a month and you think that, you know, that it's now going to £800, I'm losing £200 a month. You're not losing £200 a month.
Yeah. I got one of my business partners, Sam, to plot the data, and I think we looked at it before and spoke about that example of that property in Glasgow at 520 to now to 700. If that property's been at 520 for 7 or 8 years and now it's at 700, if you actually link it back, it's almost at inflation over a 10-year period. It's only been that over an 8-year period we didn't put, no rents went up, and all of a sudden it's like, fuck, market's caught back up. But spread over that time, it's just
Yeah,
inflation.
you're absolutely right. You know,
so it's not. It's drastically huge, and it's scary headlines going, "Oh, the rents went up 35%," but it's not really.
When I started off buying my first property in 1993 or whatever,
Old fucker.
I remember at that time the figures that were in my head was it was $350 a month for a one bed, $450 for a two bed. That figure never changed for like
Years.
20 years. You know. Now, as you say, but then inflation never really did much over that period either.
The cottage flats in Glasgow, they sat at, the rent was like $550, you know, Hillington, Cardonald, the rest of it. The rent sat at like $500, $550 for 10 years. Didn't change. We just rented one out £1,000 a month in Hillington. Crazy.
The thing as well, £1,000 a month rental. If you look at what is the chances of that person staying in there for 20 years? These are short term rents until they can get their mortgage.
Afford their mortgage, and
so moving on from rents, it's a dirty subject that. You know, looking at mortgage rates, you know, and the interest rates like we talked about there. And obviously with rates shooting up, I found a stat here in one of the articles. Landlords are paying an extra $5.5 billion a year to their banks following a surge in mortgage rates. Data shows buy-to-let investors are now collectively paying $15 billion a year in mortgage interest, a 58% jump since November 2021, which was really before, that was when rates started rising. You know, when the Bank of England started raising the interest rates, shows analysis by Hamptons. Also an article which I pulled out as well. The banks just released their quarterly profits yesterday, I think it was, in Lloyds Banking Group. The profits were up. They trebled their profits.
Was it a quarter, like 1.9 billion
in this quarter compared to last year's quarter? Obviously, that's linked to... I looked at it myself, you know, the rate that they're paying out in their savings to their savings customers. So like I've got money in a personal savings account there, and I looked at it the other day, it was like 2% or something like that, which they'd increased it to, you know, but they're charging, you know, on their mortgages, it's like 6.5%. So there's quite a spread there, and quite a good profit margin for the banks. And, you know, I'm like at 2% on my savings, I could be getting at least 5% elsewhere, so I need to do something.
You can be getting more with me, Nick.
Or I could be putting it to investing in one of your projects and maybe getting 10%.
But interestingly, you said that the interest that buy-to-let investors are paying up is up 58%, but the rent on the last article was up 35%. So really, if the investors... Aye. And if the investors are leveraged...
But also, you know, it's up 58%, but where is it compared to 2007, for instance?
Exactly, aye.
Yeah.
And so there's an army of people that have come into the marketplace since the crash of 2007, 2008. They've gone through the property academies and the training courses and the get-rich-quick schemes, thinking everything stays at 0% interest rates. Every business plan looked great on 0% interest rates. But, you know, the smart people say around the next corner, you know, we know we're going through a tough time just now, but as you said earlier on, you've got to average it out.
Yeah.
It's not a get-rich-quick business, but there's too many people that are in it to make my million 7 years.
I think it's going to be that 1 or 2 years we're going to see results. No, you're not. You're going to see results for a long period of time.
Leverage is also a very dangerous thing. You know,
just for a wee bit of investing advice while we've got you here. I mean, obviously go and see your independent financial advisor, not Davy Hutton. But
the Midas touch in reverse.
If you're sitting there with 100 grand in the bank at the moment, right, and you're still only getting 2% in your savings account, where'd you put your money at the moment? Like, do you still put it into property, buy to let? Like,
I do,
yeah,
because it's a marketplace. I know, but you're looking at it longer term. You're not looking at how much we're going to make the next year.
Yeah,
and if you buy just now and the prices are too high, you buy another one next year. Then again,
averages out.
Yeah, over the piece that'll average out. Yeah. And I'm obviously older than you boys. I'm 55 now, and you do start to look at it and say, how many more cycles have I got left in me? You know, if we're kind of heading down the way, am I going to still be here when it comes up the next time?
To benefit for the backup, you
can't look at it like that. You know, I don't really want to be looking at an exit strategy. I'm not really one of these people looking forward to retirement. I'm kind of thinking, what's the next thing I'm going to do?
Yeah.
But do you think about your boy? Obviously, your boy's 17 now as well. Do you think about him? Like, do you think about passing it on to him and what that's going to look like as well?
I don't want to dictate his career for him. Right now, he's got no idea what he wants to do. He's just a typical 17-year-old kid. But I've never really involved him in my business. I'd much rather he went and
Did his own thing.
you know, I've done okay, and there's enough safety net there that he can go out and do what he wants to do. He doesn't need to
Worry about the money.
It's not so much worry about the money, but he's not going to necessarily struggle to get his first mortgage because you will help him.
Yeah.
I know you want your kids to be happy. I don't really want them to have to go down the mine or, you know.
I've easily put my 11-year-old son off becoming involved in property and becoming a landlord because he just looks at my TikTok account and he sees the hatred and abuse that I get. And he's like, Dad,
Why do I want to be the hated person?
You're a landlord.
You don't get anything of what I get, boy.
You're a parasite. No, I get parasite, scum, a leech of society. Yes.
That's just your family. Tell them to stop commenting on your work site.
I think your son's the one that's fucking trolling you.
He probably is, but he's probably set up 5 fake
This
accounts.
is the thing, Nick. I mean, I've known you long enough to know that you're a good landlord and you do give a shit about people.
Do you?
But there's an awful lot of people that don't.
Yeah.
And it's the same in the estate agency world. Estate agents get a really bad name. There are good estate agents out there. And there are a whole hefty load of shit ones. You know, you speak to estate agents just now, they'll all tell you how wonderful the market is. There's never been a better time to sell. The market's shit. Everybody knows the market's shit. You know, the honest estate agents will tell you they're greeting because they don't have the volume. And it's all very well to say, I sold one house that's gone up 50%. It's one house, it's one sale.
It's not the volume.
No, so I think you're going to see a lot of estate agents really start to struggle, particularly the estate agents who don't have the letting
Lettings
side
at the back,
or the other side of a business to. I mean, right now,
That's interesting.
I noticed a lot of that in 2008. The estate agents that didn't have lettings, all of a sudden the crash, all of a sudden had their letting agents portfolio built up, and I'm assuming like what the point you were going to was that'll sustain them. The ones that have done that'll sustain them through the next crash almost.
Yeah. Well, cards on the table. If you look at my business, the estate agency side has lost money over the last 12 months, probably over the last 24 months. But that's been offset because we bought properties that we're going to do up and sell in a rising market. So these properties made a lot more money than they were budgeted to make, which plugged the holes in the
other
side.
side, yeah.
So if you look at the accounts in total, everything's okay. But if you look at it from here going forward, you're in a declining market, so that you buy a property in day one, you can't sell it for the next 6 months. So 6 months from now, what's it going to be worth? It's certainly not going to go up the 20% that happened previously. So you're going to make less money on that side. The estate agency is going to lose more money.
Hence why you're
it won't balance.
Hence why you're launching your music career.
Absolutely, that's my diversification.
If anyone's listening, by the way, give yourself a wee plug for Davy's music. So.
Well, it's not something I went into to do commercially. It was just during lockdown. I knew I could write. I also knew that I could play a musical instrument, so I learned to play the guitar just to be able to put a tune to it. Then I met a music producer and ended up in the studio. And really all I wanted to do was be credible in what I was doing. I wanted to be able to, put together an album that maybe had a message, had in my head male mental health is something that I wanted to tackle. I've obviously got a political message in my head as well, so I've got a kind of blend of both of these things, and it's the legacy thing of I want there to be something there when I'm dead, like writing your book kind of thing,
So where can we find you? Is it YouTube? You were saying you've put some stuff out on.
What day is this? Thursday. It goes out tomorrow. So yeah, it'll go out on YouTube. Probably one at a time on that. Not quite sure how the.
Just type in Davy Hutton.
Just type in Davy Hutton, you'll find me. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Superb.
Moving on. Actually, this is our last article. It's about commercial property. So the headline is Scottish landlords looking beyond residential to commercial property and move that could revive the high street. So this is taken from the Scotsman, and just to read you out quickly, a quarter of Scottish landlords plan to add a further property to their portfolios in the next 12 months, with 15% of the group saying that they are planning to buy commercial property, including offices, retail space, manufacturing space, rather than residential, according to recent research from Shawbrook. Do you know Shawbrook? You get any loans with Shawbrook?
No, because they don't land in Aberdeen.
Oh, right, okay. It also found that 23% of Scottish landlords currently own some commercial property and plan to invest in more, while 25% don't currently own any but are considering putting capital in it. Davy, you get any commercial property? And do you think it's a good thing diversifying a wee bit just now?
Commercial property, I've got a few. Ones that I've stumbled across as opposed to ones that I've actually looked for. It's a much more logical market. The commercial market is much more rental yield sets the value of the property type thing. I don't quite know how it's going to rescue the high street.
Yeah, I was a bit confused about that.
I don't see how the amateur landlord is going
to
buy shops in the high street.
Yeah, suddenly there's going to be a market for shops. I think what you might find is people buying shops on the high street and turning them into flats and things.
Or else the big thing at the moment we're finding amongst our circle, because we've had, we've got to mention him again, Jerry Alexander. Comes up on every single podcast, and he specialises in it's like HMO for commercial, basically subdividing the spaces. That seems to be a very popular strategy, and a lot of people are getting involved in that at the moment.
Well, we do that in Paisley with the charity that we've got, Find Your Feet. We've got a building there that Find Your Feet occupy one floor, and we put the rest out as subsidised rents to other charities. Mm-hmm. Call it the charity hub, where all the charities are in the one building, cool. And it's great. And and you know they kind of feed each other with ideas. Mm-hmm. Too many people in that kind of sector look at another charities being competition. It doesn't work like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
They show each other how to get grants and how to get funding, and hopefully get longevity for everybody. So there is a market for that hub type setup.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we run the networking events, right? You've talked at one of them at the Glen Hill, and we get 60, 70 people along, and they're all over Scotland. But the one that I run's in Glasgow, and at the break we do breakout sessions. So we've got the kind of group that does buy to let, and I run that, and we say, right, if anyone wants to talk about buy to let, go and see Nick. Jerry Alexander's come along at the few last ones, and we say, if anyone wants to talk about commercial property, go and talk to Jerry. So we've split up. So I usually get like 1 or 2 people coming to the buy to let. Jerry gets about 20 to 30 people going to the commercial.
Really? Is just because he's more interested in you?
Probably.
Pretty much. It's nothing to do with...
We hear Nick every week on the podcast.
It's nothing... Seriously though, you're seeing that as people being more interested in commercial than resi?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm kind of seen that quite a bit as well, especially with the short-term rent space almost getting obliterated recently. I'm seeing that more people are diversifying. And
it doesn't do a lot for me, I have to say. It doesn't interest me as much. I don't have much of a passion for it.
I'm the same. I like the returns on it, and I've not got that many, to be fair, but I like it for the returns, and I like it for the simplicity, and I like it for I'm dealing with a business owner rather than a person. But it doesn't. I'm the same. It doesn't get you going, does it?
No, for me it doesn't. I said I've got a bit older now, and my drive isn't what it once was. I don't have the same need to create my empire. I'm quite kind of happy with what I've got. And we've spoken about this before. I mean, Quick Sale we could have made as big as you can imagine it being. I just didn't want it to be that. And it's not all about how much money you can accumulate. That's not what your wealth is. I know it's such a cliche, but are you happy doing what you're doing? I like to know who my tenants are. Mm-hmm. I like to be aware that somebody's mum died, and at the same time know that I don't need to go in and put their rents up. I probably couldn't have done that 20 years ago because I needed the money more. Yeah. I did have debt then, and but
it's interesting when you're looking at cycles. I suppose from us following your cycle, us maybe looking at paying off debt and reducing the portfolio down as you get older. It's quite interesting to hear it from a different perspective.
Well, it comes down to who do you want to be? Do you want to be Davy Hutton that stole the little old lady's house? Or do you want to be Davy Hutton that helped the little old lady? It's the same transaction, it's just down to how you do it and who you want to be.
And the internet's made it's made the place such a small world, so Like, you know, you can get called out quite easily if you want to be that Davy Hutton that robs the little old lady of her house.
Absolutely. It takes you a long time to make a reputation, it takes you a second to lose it. But I mean, also in the internet world, you're competing now against all these kids, I feel like, that are just starting off, that are out there with all their bluffing bullshit, and it's the, you know,
hungry and in your
You've even
face.
started using your hands now, Davy. I've been watching you here.
I was watching that video the other
trying
week.
to get more animated. I know it's the new world.
So that was a great chat. I think just kind of, I guess we do have a responsibility, you know, as landlords, and we don't talk about, you know, we often just look at the figures and, you know, look at what works, the numbers. We always just talk about, you know, the numbers work. But, you know, it does really have an impact when rents are going up at 15% year on year. And how long can that sustain? You know, it's a lot of people moaning at the moment, you know, because landlords can't put the rents up and all the rest of it. I think if you start looking further afield, like I've been looking into other countries and what they do. If you look at, like, for example, some places in like the Netherlands or Germany, I mean, it's brutal there if you're a landlord. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I think some places
20-year returns is what you're getting on these things. Of, you know, if the bank's giving you 2%, you might get 3% through property, but you're not getting 13% year on year.
And apparently some places, if you buy a property, you can't rent it out within the first 4 years or something like that. So, you know, I think it could be a lot worse. And we've done a podcast previously about how buy-to-let still is, you know, a viable option for people. If you're a good landlord, you maintain it to a good standard.
And you're looking at it for the long term.
Yes.
It's still,
I think it's easy to get pissed off that you're not making as much money as you were last year. You know, it's like me saying to you about my figures. I made good money last year. If I don't make good money this year, you don't make good money this year. You know that when the market turns, you're going to make it again through that cycle. You just got to ride it through.
Great stuff.
cheers for that, Davy. I appreciate it.
What's the future hold for you then, Davy, over the next year? Obviously, you're a wee bit nervous about how the market's going to go. Well, not nervous. You're not, like you've said in the podcast there, you're at an age now where you're not.
Oh, do you know, it's a great leveler, because you get older and you get conscious that I've got less time left in this world than you two do. But the way the world's going, it might not be that. I mean, I wondered, like 30 years ago, if you'd gone into a bookies and said, what's the odds of me being last generation on Earth, they'd have said it was 1,000,000 to 1. Then came the internet and a pandemic and a war in Europe. AI. Now the Middle East. If you went in today and said, what's the odds? They're probably going to say it's about even money. So we're probably all going to die on the same day, boys. So it's a great leveler for me. I'm really optimistic about it.
People are reading my emails now. People are getting emails from me thinking I'm really smart and my English is great now because of AI. When I basically didn't sit higher English, I failed standard grade. I'm this super intelligent guy now writing emails.
Once you get that Elon Musk implant into your brain as well, there'll be no stopping you.
That's it. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Davy. Really enjoy the chat as always, and we'll look forward to some more viral TikTok clips going out from this podcast.
I look forward to them myself. All the compliments will be flooding my way for the guy up the stairs in his mom's back bedroom, banging away in his sticky keyboard. Fuck you.